Hello everyone, and welcome back to the So Below Average podcast, the terrible show about the worst that this world has to offer. If you've forgotten my name again, my name is Allison, and I will be your guide across the river Styx and into the underworld, where the worst of the worst come to be covered in paper cuts and thrown into a vat of lemon juice. Okay, gear up, because today's episode, Depression and Demon Babies, is a doozy. Try saying that 5 times fast. I actually found this movie through one of my favorite makeup channels, Glam&Gore, who actually has a film degree and looked into the movie in order to do a makeup look for it. Because of how interesting her review was, I remembered it when I went to make my film schedule and decided that I was gonna redo it for sure, especially after she showed how bad it was. And this one, guys, this one is... I'll get into Mykie's review later, but first I wanted to give you a little overview of this absolute fucking masterpiece. Today, yours truly is looking into the movie 12-12-12, which is often stylized to Evil Born, written and directed by Jared Cohn. Just to let you guys know, this one is bad. And this episode might be a little lengthier than normal because of it. I know that last week I said that I wanted it to be shorter than the first episode, and it ended up being several minutes longer, so tonight I'm not making any promises about the length of the episode. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the cringe. Even though I hope you would know this by now, I must go through my disclaimer again. I didn't go to school for film. I have no experience in filmmaking besides some really embarrassing acting work that I did in college. If you're looking for people who are going to talk about pretentious artistic choices, I'm not your girl and this ain't your show. But if you, like me, are interested in a former college kid's attempt to talk about the worst creature features that mankind has ever produced, you're in the right place. Welcome to hell, everyone. I told you we'd be there. And speaking of hell, this movie is straight out of it, because this movie is literally about the spawn of Satan. 12-12-12, or Evil Born, is focused around the experiences of the people close to Sebastian, a baby born on December 12th of 2012. Sebastian is the Antichrist, and the movie follows him, his birth parents, an evil member of the occult named Mahari, they never say it in the movie, so I'm just gonna say it's Mahari, and a smattering of police officers as they struggle over the baby and the beginning of the apocalypse. But we'll get to that after I've given you a bit more information on the film. Anyway, because of the jarring nature of saying 12-12-12 over and over and over and over and over again, I'm going to be referring to this movie as Evil Born. And that's probably more effort than this film deserves, but I'm gonna make it easier on myself. Okay. Alright. So, direction! The movie was directed by Jared Cohn, who is also known as Jared Michaels in other works. According to his Wikipedia page, much of his body of work is as an actor, starring in films such as The Blair Witch Project-esque Underground Lizard People and James Cullen Bressick's Pernicious. He has acted in much of his directing work, including Underground Lizard People and one of his better-known films, Born Bad. It appears that he has as much of a zest for creature flicks as I do. In his personal life, though, Cohn is a black belt in Shaolin Kempo Karate, is a certified diver, and a professional paintball player. He is the most interesting man in the world. Please don't sue me. He's so interesting, in fact, that he covers 3 sections of my normal production rundown. He also wrote the movie. He wrote the movie, he directed it, and he starred in it. Talk about a jack of all trades, or a Jared of all trades, whatever. Maybe this tells you that he believes in himself just a little too much. Other than this movie, he has writing credits in several other movies, including Born Bad and Hold Your Breath. He has also produced several movies, including 2009's Legend Has It and 2010's The Revenant. Besides Jack of all trades Jared, the film stars Sarah Malakul Lane as Veronica, Sebastian's mother. Sarah is of English and Thai descent and has starred in numerous B movies, including Halloween, Pussy Trap, Kill Kill. God, I hate the P word so much. And King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, from the looks of it. This is the only film that made it into theaters, and it's easily the worst of the films in her filmography from what I've seen. However, don't quote me on that, because after watching this movie several times, my brain melted into a soggy pile of gelatinous goo that I had to rebuild with popsicle sticks, some glue, and some glitter. I made a mess in my bedroom when I did that, you guys. It was very unfortunate. I'll never get the glitter out of my carpet, or my sheets, my pillowcases, my mattress. You got it, whatever. The film also stars Ruben Guevara, also known as Jesus Guevara, as Mahari. Ruben has some fairly decent acting parts under his belt, appearing in shows like Jane the Virgin and Snowfall, and appearing in movies that had decent critic scores in IMDb, like Santiago and Desire Street, which is not to be confused with a streetcar named Desire. It appears that presently he's dipping his toes into directing work, with a short film called Reconnect that is currently in pre-production. Despite his involvement with this dumpster fire, I wish him all the best in his future endeavors. I will say that I know that it's difficult to get acting work in Hollywood, and whenever you have the opportunity to get something, you need to take it. But sometimes those projects just don't go well, and I can't fault the actors for any of this because I know they need their money. But I do fault the direction, writing, and production for writing such a piece of absolute garbage. I don't actually have much further to say about the cast, only that most of them seem to do parts in movies that receive less than 5 out of 10 stars. With the exception of Shakira Janae Payne, who has been able to branch out somewhat because of her youth, including a Nickelodeon show, as well as providing voices for Into the Spider-Verse. Also worth mentioning is Shauna Chin, one of Jamaica's most famous actresses, and she serves as a goodwill ambassador for the government of Jamaica. She has a bit role as a child advocate named Barbara, which that doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure if I'm going to cover that part of the movie because my review section is going to be way, way longer than usual. It's just ridiculous how much I have to say. But again, we'll get there soon. Okay, so this film was funded by Asylum Media. They're famous for putting out B-movies, and I would address their productions now, but in lieu of how long my script for this is probably going to be, I'm going to skip over it for today. But trust me, I have plenty of Asylum films on my roster, and I will cover it eventually. Like I mentioned earlier, Sarah Lane is known for her roles in Thai media, and there was some backlash when promotional pictures of Sarah as Veronica, the mother of the demon child, surfaced. Okay, many people in Thailand believed the photos to be real instead of doctored, with all of them showing Lane as heavily pregnant. Turns out Thailand has some serious cultural taboos about unwed motherhood, and I personally don't want to get into that. I just kind of find it ironic that that's what made people upset when the movie is as terrible as it is, especially since Veronica in the movie is married. The character is in fact married, but I thought it was interesting to note that it did cause some international backlash. I was unable to find a lot of details about budget and filming. Normally, it's decently easy to find out why a film is bad when you learned it was crunched for time or horrifically underfunded. And then you can't blame producers and special effects guys or anything like that as much when they didn't have the resources. However, without a budget or time frame in which they put this film together, I can make no assumptions about jack-of-all-trades Jared's competence in filmmaking. All I can judge is that some of his other movies have much higher ratings, and for some reason the effort in this one was lacking, for lack of a better term. But it should be noted that I don't know what the budget was. The budget could have been $1,000 for all I know. But what I do know is that without it, I have to judge the fact that this film was in theaters. It is feature length. You really have to remember that some people do it better with less budget. Like, honestly, Jurassic Games only had a budget of $10 million, and it wasn't that bad. Like I mentioned last week, I really was quite well surprised with how well the movie flowed. There were obviously issues, but it wasn't nearly as bad. This film was in theaters. We don't know what the box office numbers were, and I do not know the film budget. I'm wondering if they are hiding that from us, honestly, a little bit, because this film, in no way, shape, or form, has the production value or the necessity of the special effects graphics that were needed for the Jurassic games. So if it was anything over, I think, an $8 million budget, I want to know where the money went. Because it clearly did not go into SFX. It did not go into costuming. It didn't go into actors. It didn't go anywhere. So where did it go? So if anybody else can find anything on the budget for this film, please let me know, and I will make an addendum in my next episode. So I want to go ahead and give you guys the trigger warning. Hi! This is the warning for those of you who would like to see Evil Born. There are spoilers in the rest of the episode. If you would like to pause here and go watch the movie, please do so now. Just remember to come back later so you can tear out your hair with me. This is also a good opportunity to issue a warning to any of you who are sensitive to violence, sexual assault, mentions of gore, the occult, or anything related to those topics. This is a good time to skip forward in the episode. If you prefer, please go to the review portion at 1 hour and 4 minutes. Thank you, and see you there! So now it's time for the plot summary, since I don't have anything else for the production. I really don't. So now I'm going to go into the plot. So, sometime before December 11th of 2012, a cult member, Mykie, and the rest of his sect, coven? I'm not actually sure of the terminology, but it's inconsequential either way. I just watched this movie 3 times, you gotta give me a break. Anyway, a satanic cult performs a ritual on a naked woman. I'm not sure if this woman is the mother, Veronica, or not. I'm just confused, honestly, as to why this scene is necessary. But, let's keep going. On December 12th, Veronica is in the hospital in labor. After a long labor and an epidural, she is not yet fully dilated. Despite the protestations of both parents, the doctor decides to do an emergency C-section. Veronica's husband, Carlos, is forced out of the birthing room for his obnoxious behavior towards the doctor. While the doctor is delivering Veronica's baby, Mykie, the Satanist, stalks through the hospital to find her. In the process, he stumbles upon a new mother who sees through his doctor disguise. He forces the mother to overdose on her IV drip of painkillers. Veronica's C-section begins to go awry when the nurse begins to insult the baby's malformed appearance. In what seems to be retaliation, the infant latches onto her neck and tears out her throat with his teeth, and then strangles the doctor to death with his own umbilical cord. Veronica somehow comes to hold the child in her arms again as a police investigation into the deaths begin. An officer stops Mykie from entering the room to take the child from his mother. A week later, Veronica and her husband Carlos bring the child, who they have named Sebastian, home from the hospital. They come upon a dead rat in their driveway, but brush it off, and that night, Veronica is up breastfeeding Sebastian when he decides to bite down on her nipple, drawing blood. She decides that she will no longer breastfeed any further, and Carlos manages her up. When Carlos leaves to go to the restroom, he discovers several hundred dead flies on their countertop. Mykie breaks into their house searching for Sebastian. Carlos hears this and tells Veronica to call the police and protect Sebastian. The detective, Detective Barnes, shows up promptly afterward and asks questions about the couple and their child since the death of the hospital staff. He reveals that none of the security cameras at the hospital that night were working, and thus none of them captured the deaths, although clearly Barnes suspects the couple. When the police leave, they go back to bed, deciding to go to the doctor to have Sebastian looked at. In the middle of the night, Sebastian begins doing? I'm not quite sure what he was doing. On Veronica's crotch. Veronica runs to take a shower, and Carlos begins heating water for tea. Seemingly overcome or possessed by some otherworldly power, Carlos drinks the boiling water and dies. Mykie breaks back in to kidnap Sebastian, but Veronica is able to steal back her baby. The police arrive and take Sebastian from Veronica, putting him into the hands of a CPS worker while they investigate her husband's death. The CPS agent who took Sebastian also ends up dead when her seatbelt strangles her while she's driving. The car crashes, but Sebastian is unharmed. Meanwhile, Veronica goes to stay with her sister Gabriella at a large house several hundred miles away. Gabriella is furious that CPS took Veronica's baby, having lost her own child to foster care herself. Detective Barnes finds Sebastian in the crashed car and brings him to Gabriella, revealing that in the light of the current circumstances, the judge decided to give legal custody of Sebastian to her, reuniting Veronica with her baby. Mykie sneaks onto Gabriella's property, trying to kidnap Sebastian again. After Veronica cuts her hand, Gabriella gives her Ambien, and Veronica sees Mykie creeping around again, beginning to go into a psychotic, almost zombie-like state. Veronica begins hallucinating, including an episode where Carlos violently rapes her. Shortly afterward, it's revealed that everything following Mykie sneaking onto the property had been a dream. Yes, they included a rape scene for absolutely nothing. Veronica begins hallucinating again, but snaps out of it to sign for a package for Gabriella. The delivery boy sees Sebastian and begins to mock him over the phone to his friend. Like Carlos, the delivery boy is overcome by the baby's powers and stabs himself in the throat several times with a box cutter. Gabriella returns home to find out that Mykie is skulking around the neighborhood. Barnes arrives and informs them that Mykie is a believer that the world will end with the Mayan calendar. After checking the perimeter of the home, he tells them that he's going to have patrols stationed outside of the house at all times. Gabriella freaks out on Veronica, saying that what's happening to her is karma for not being there for Gabriella emotionally. Later that night, Gabriella tells Veronica that she needs to leave before quickly taking it back. Veronica begins to hallucinate again as she packs her things, seeing an alternative version of herself in a mirror, then shakes it off and goes back to packing. Sebastian watches Gabriella in the shower, who then gets into a fight with Veronica over her son. Sebastian proceeds to bite Gabriella in the leg and then tears out her throat and when she falls to the floor. Mykie murders the cop watching the house and a maintenance worker in his attempts to get to Sebastian. Somehow, Sebastian escapes his mother's care and ends up on a hiking trail. He's found by a young hiker who calls the police and then is compelled to jump off a nearby cliff. Sebastian is picked up by a foster parent of some sort named Barbara, who brings him back to her home. Her daughter Kayla remarks on the state of the baby, who they learn bites hard enough to draw blood. Sebastian compels Barbara to drown herself in her bathroom sink, and Kayla brings Sebastian outside for his safety before she returns inside, turns on the gas, and blows herself up with a microwave. I wish I was making this up, guys. Mykie finds Sebastian, who appears to be walking away from the incident, and kidnaps him for good. Veronica continues to hallucinate while she searches for Sebastian. She runs into a Catholic priest who begins to pray over her, but she runs away. People also begin to grow increasingly violent, including a young man who shoots his 3 companions and then himself in front of her. And then Detective Barnes finds her and tells her that the cult that Mykie belongs to believe her son will foster the devil in his tiny infant body. He also reveals that the doctor's autopsy report came back, and his DMT levels were high at the time of death, indicating that Sebastian's bite induced a religious-type feeling, like in those who were compelled. I still don't understand this or why it was necessary to add to the script, but okay. They arrive just as the cult finishes Sebastian's ritual, inviting in the devil. Sebastian grows horns from his little teeny baby head and begins to look worse than ever. Barnes goes in alone, but is killed by Sebastian. The cult goes after Veronica, who they quickly capture and attempt to execute via Sebastian's super sharp baby teeth. The baby seems almost reluctant to hurt his mother, and then Barnes' backup finally arrives, killing several cult members. Veronica gets loose of her bonds and stabs several other members in self-defense. One of the officers, still alive, helps her escape, but he is quickly killed by Sebastian. Mykie, still alive despite taking a bullet to the chest, follows her out, followed closely by Sebastian. Veronica shoots Mykie dead, but is unable to kill her son, who then rips her throat out for pointing a gun at him. The priest from earlier returns and is also killed by Sebastian. Following this is a montage of everyone that Sebastian killed, followed by a close-up of Veronica, who opens up her eyes and takes a breath. The movie ends here, and I have officially decided that I hate my life very, very much. Why did I decide to make this podcast and do this to myself? Why did I do this to myself? I don't understand. Do I have just like a sadomasochistic streak? What did I do to myself to deserve this? Oh. But that's the end. That's the end of the movie. Is a sequel bait, stupid moment where the dead woman goes and opens her eyes and she's suddenly alive again. Did her son bring her back to life? We don't know. But either way, it is time for the shortest segment of this show, the forgivable choices. The forgivable choices. I think this is going to be my shortest forgivable choices segment ever. I know that in episode 1 I said that there's always something good to say about a film. However, here I have to root around and nitpick for stuff that's good to say. Like, I had to scrape the bottom of the barrel. The costuming's halfway decent and believable for the year 2012. But considering the movie came out in December of 2012 and filming ended in late July of that same year, I'm sure it wasn't all that difficult to get clothes that are in style from the time period. Yeah, I can't really give that. I can't really give it to them. Mahari's face tattoos don't look awful, I suppose. It's not Suicide Squad Joker level fake tattoo work, but it's believable enough, even though sometimes they look a little overpowdered. They look a little translucent sometimes, a little too much so. Something good I can say. There are a lot of creature kills in the film, I guess. I counted at least 9 that were directly murdered by Sebastian with his abnormally sharp baby fangs, and at least another 8 where the baby compelled them to commit suicide. Honestly, I don't mind the compulsion kills. They were far more creative and, in general, more fun to watch than watching a paper-mache baby rip out somebody's throat. The movie is really good for laughs. It's actually completely hysterical in places, but one moment stands out the most to me. When Detective Barnes walks into the satanic sanctuary, he says,
"Oh, hell yeah. Hell fucking yeah. This is weird as shit, but you'd still get your fucking hands up in the air, asshole. God damn you."
And I'm sorry, but that is unintentionally the best part of the movie. It's the best acted and easily the greatest source of laughs. I suppose in general, besides that the camera work isn't terrible. They make some really bad choices, but I'm not convinced that was up to the cinematographer. The shots that work normal are decent and clear and not completely off-putting. And honestly, that's all I can say. That's all I can say, is that costuming is kind of decent, nice amount of kills, but I just think it's better if we stop putting off the inedible. So now, listen to my rant.
This is unforgivable.
Why did old Fortuna stop playing? I need it as the background for this. Maybe I'll insert it as background music for this section, I don't know. So, if I do it, it'll start right about now. Okay, so speaking of music, let's talk about it. I've never actually heard a film score so bland and generic in my life. Here's a bit from the opening. Actually, the bland and generic part can be applied to literally all of the film's sound in general. Normally, I don't really talk about this kind of stuff in my reviews, but even I can't miss the problems with the background noise. Every sound is something I've heard before, you know? It's not only is it generic, it's also spotty. There are plenty of times that there's action going on, and there's no ambient noise, like idiot running out into traffic, but no car sounds. What's that about? A lot of the time, the film is straight up silent. The only music that you will ever remember hearing is the sudden eerie crescendos that you hear in every horror movie, like... That was a very bad rendition of Psycho, excuse me. Oh, and then there's the baby crying. Oh, God. The baby crying. I swear, the baby crying is the same cry every single time. Why couldn't you spring for at least one more baby sound? Just one more sound. Just all the baby cries are all the same. You hear them in the maternity ward. You hear it when the baby's actually crying. You constantly hear it. It's awful. Along those lines, there's a sort of whispering sound that is ripped straight from Friday the 13th. I'm sure that it's meant to portray the same kind of psychic link that Jason has with his mother, since the sound only ever appears when Sebastian is trying to compel people to hurt themselves. However, it's still incredibly unoriginal, and even though it's a ripoff, it's still done pretty badly. Special effects are... well... to be honest, they're atrocious. The dinosaurs in Jurassic Games are better. The whole opening credits features... The whole opening credits features 1 or 2... Okay, 3 or 4 minutes worth of a transparent flame over various satanic imagery. It has nothing to do with the movie itself. It just serves to add some bright red to its color palette and make it much scarier than it actually is. The blood effects are absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. In the C-section scene when the doctor is opening Veronica up to deliver her baby, he gets squirted with blood all over his face. I know that this may be hard for these filmmakers, but unless you open up a very large, high-pressure vein or artery, blood will not spray at you. It will not geyser out of you unless if you get your throat slashed. It doesn't happen that way. A C-section would not have that kind of blood spatter. Seriously, honestly, I'm thinking about it now, the blood spatter ends up coating not just the OBGYN, but his nurse and Veronica. The blood goes all the way up to her face. It's obscenely ridiculous. Also, half the people in this movie die with blood already dyed on their chest. I noticed this mostly with the postal worker, but when I went back and watched it all again, I found similar results with other people. I don't know who the SFX artist was for the film, and I won't judge their work by this shit show, but I don't understand why they chose not to touch up the fake blood between takes, because if the blood is already dried down to you, you've been dead for a really long time. Long enough that the blood has dried to your clothing. The time jumps don't work in this film. Okay, on the subject of special effects, the baby. The fucking baby is awful. Rather than put in any effort to perhaps repaint a cheap baby doll, or something that had some give and weight, they chose to make what looks like a paper-mache puppet of a demon baby. It's actively ridiculous, and in many cases doesn't even look like a human baby. It's probably the source of the most laughter in the film, but it's also incredibly low effort and shockingly bad. It's so stiff. He's constantly wrapped with blankets so you never see the baby outside of them. And then sometimes you do see him sitting up on his own as a baby doll. Like in the scene where the child advocate is walking up to the baby to pick it up, you can see that it's actually just like a baby doll from the store that's sitting up in the field. They go back and forth with this, and in the birth scene, I did notice that sometimes it does look like they just used like one of those the baby dolls with the plastic faces and then smothered it in scab blood. Why not just repaint a baby doll and then use a live baby for action shots where you don't need to see his face? I don't understand. It's clear, you must know somebody with a newborn. It can't be that difficult. You must know someone. Oh, okay. I don't understand. Along the same lines, Veronica's pregnant belly is also poorly made paper-mache. You can actually see it move and wiggle around when they pull up her hospital gown because it's not even attached to her. Come on! Paper-mache is a fun craft, but you should never be making prosthetics with it. Especially considering it doesn't even look like skin. It doesn't look like her skin tone. It doesn't have like a mattified effect because skin doesn't shine like it has glue on it. At least cover it with liquid latex to give it a skin-like texture and then make up over it. It would have looked much better that way, I think. Because I definitely noticed that it was, in fact, paper-mache right off the bat. Okay, so I know that I said earlier that I'm not going to talk about things like film angles and lighting and all that jazz, but this stuff I learned from Glam&Gore's review. First, I want to say a little something about the camera angles. Most of this movie is shot at what Mykie called a Dutch tilt angle. According to the internet, the Dutch tilt angle involves setting the camera to shoot at an angle, generally like a 45-degree angle from what I saw. It's supposed to create a feeling of fear or uneasiness in the viewer. Now, it's fine to use these angles sparingly to put the audience on edge. However, using them in every single scene and every other shot is screwed up. Honestly, the only movie that I've ever heard of doing this to the extent of it is Battlefield Earth, a film which was awarded the worst movie of the decade 2 years prior to this. So clearly they knew that overusing Dutch tilt angles was not a good idea. I don't know why they did this. This is another point that Mykie made in her video. The lighting is atrocious. In multiple places, the scene is clearly shot during the day and color corrected to be a night shot. This is not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of films do this, a lot of TV shows do this, but this is a bad thing when you have no continuity after editing. Multiple day for night shots are followed by regular day shots in the same scene, making for a very awkward and mistake-ridden day-night cycle. It just doesn't seem to work. The acting in this movie is also absolutely horrific. Veronica is particularly wooden, only serving to scream and look lovingly down at her warped demon baby thing. Everyone else seems to be barely trying, or at least trying to be wooden and stiff. The only one of them who's marginally decent is Mahari and maybe Detective Barnes. And Detective Barnes' only good scene is his hilarious death scene, which I'll get into talking about because there are, of course, still problems with that. Okay, let's talk about what I'm particularly good at. Plot and character. Okay, terrible. 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 Nothing more than that needed to be said. Good night, guys. Bye. Yeah, just kidding. You know that I'm gonna have to go through this. I'm actually, legitimately mad at this film, guys. I don't know if you can tell, but the last two have been kind of lighthearted. I'm just like, oh, they're so stupid. Why do they do this? But this one, I'm legitimately angry about. Let's start at the opening scene with the sacrifice. Why is it necessary? What's the point? I understand that they're performing some sort of ritual or something to create the Antichrist. But is this woman Veronica? There's another girl listed as sacrifice girl in the credits, so I guess not. If it's not Veronica, what does her sacrifice have anything to do with the plot? Did the cult curse a drink and Veronica just so happened to drink it the day that she conceived Sebastian? The sacrifice was only a way to be shocking and to allow the cult the chance to smother a naked woman in blood and then stab her in the stomach repeatedly, which had a very clear sexual connotation. It just didn't make any sense. I don't understand why they thought that this was the best way to go. The introduction to the scene in the hospital is terrible. They show you 20 or so quick-fire images making it clear that they're in a maternity ward, and then they play terrible sound clips of babies crying, the same one over and over and over. Why? wouldn't it have been quicker and more effective to transition to a slow motion shot of Veronica in the midst of a contraction, and then slowly pull out to show the doctors rushing around her to give her an epidural, which has no effect? Wouldn't that have been simpler, given Veronica's character more focus, and upped the suspense? It would have had the added benefit that it wouldn't have infantilized your viewership. Just a thought. Here we go. This is one of the places where I start getting mad. The birth is completely wrong. Number one, they keep increasing her epidural incredibly quickly. Considering how much they're injecting into her and how fast they're doing it, I imagine that Veronica would not only be in La La Land, but also in heaven, because she would certainly have overdosed. Also, generally speaking, an epidural is used in conjunction with other pain relievers, not just on its own. Some women do not actively respond to epidurals, but if she's not responding, you'd think that maybe, just maybe, the doctors would stop pumping her full of drugs that aren't working. Because either they might have injected her in the wrong place, because the epidural does go in between your vertebrae and settle into your spinal column, but if you get that wrong and you pierce the wrong place, then it's not going to be the effect that you want it to be. It's just going to be leaking fluid into her system that probably won't be good for her in the long run either. So why would you keep injecting her when it's clearly not working? Also, we're shown a quick image of a paper-mache foot poking out of what either looks to be Veronica's cervix or vagina. I'm guessing vagina because of the coloring. But I'm not sure exactly. Either way, it means that the baby is breech and would need to have a C-section anyway, considering how long her labor has been and how well the baby is handling labor. Seeing feet is never a good thing, because that can lead to possible birth defects after delivery because of the possibility of breaking the baby's bones. I've heard of this happening. They are also reluctant to do a C-section because of Veronica's religion, which is, of course, ridiculous. During no other part of the movie is she shown to be religious, and if she had been religious and she hadn't done the C-section, both mother and baby would have died. Instead, this serves to mom-shame women who do have C-sections, because, of course, only women who don't get to have a quote-unquote natural birth would give birth to the Antichrist. Nice misogyny there. Let me get this straight right now. There is nothing wrong with having a C-section. You always need to do what is right for yourself and your baby. Giving birth is incredibly personal, and you should always do what feels right to you, so long as it doesn't put the life of your child in jeopardy. That's it. Cut, paste, done, goodbye. There was no need for the mom-shaming here. Second, the OB decides to do a C-section in the birthing room instead of a hospital room. Besides the possible infections that could arise from this, because those rooms aren't nearly as sterilized as a surgical suite, I don't understand why they didn't just rush her into the OR if the situation really was that dire. It could have made things more difficult for Mahari too by forcing him to go into the birthing room only to find that a different woman has taken up residence. Maybe that would have added, a modicum of suspense to the whole thing. The C-section itself is terrible, but not as terrible as Sebastian strangling the doctor with his umbilical cord. Because, an umbilical cord isn't totally his lifeline to his mom or anything. Totally not dangerous for the infant at all. Right after he murders the doctor and nurse who delivered him, Veronica is not immediately horrified. She just cuddles her baby while there are actively bodies on the floor. What is wrong with this woman? Number one, she would have to be removed from the room for recovery because she just had surgery. Major abdominal surgery. Especially since there's more than just her blood all over the place. Just because the doctor is a doctor doesn't mean he might not have some blood-borne illness. Why on earth wouldn't you move this lady? Especially when there are dead bodies on the floor. I don't understand. No way. No way would this ever... You don't know how... the script I'm going to say right now, I'm going to get into this a little bit very, very soon, but the script is so obviously written by men who do not understand women. Jared Cohn clearly does not understand anything to do with women. It's sad, honestly. It really is. Okay. another thing I'm really mad about. Veronica's stomach immediately becomes flat again after giving birth. I'm sorry, but that's just not reality. Your skin does not bounce back like rubber after having a baby. It does not shrivel back up so you can look like the young babe you were before childbirth. I wasn't expecting a lot from this movie, but watching her stomach literally shrink like a balloon losing air is infuriating, literally. In this, right after the C-section, right after they get Sebastian out of her stomach, it looks like a balloon deflating. And it just kind of rolls back up and under her gown, and you never see her tummy again, and she looks fine. And she doesn't have a scar when you next see her with her top off. Just saying. Skin doesn't do that. But watching her stomach literally shrink like a balloon losing air is infuriating, to say the least. Skin doesn't do that. In hindsight, it probably was a balloon that they blew up and let the air out of as soon as she, quote-unquote, gave birth. Also, when the doctors die, you can clearly see them breathing on the ground. I noticed when I was looking through the reviews for this movie that I'm not the only person to notice. Okay, so Sebastian is also born with prenatal teeth. And let's talk about that for a little bit. From the limited amount of research I've done about it, it appears that having a child born with erupted teeth is fairly rare. It's even more rare for a child to be born with a full set of razor-sharp teeth. Most babies with natal teeth are only born with 1 or 2, and it can be indicative of other birth defects. Even if this just happened to be a baby born without any defects, he just tore the throat of a nurse out with his fangs. I wouldn't let him anywhere near my tatas if he did that. And yet, the parents are surprised when the evil little tyke decided to try to de-nipple his mom when she tried to breastfeed. It's just ridiculous, and it was just a reason to show Sarah Lane's nipples. Everyone in this movie is so dense that I can't stand it. Okay, this movie keeps bringing up dead rodents and dead flies. It's a common motif, and they seem to make a huge deal out of it. Why? It doesn't seem to have any particular reason unless it's a call made back to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, pestilence or some shit like that. It's idiotic. It's just idiotic. Mahari breaks into the house. Why doesn't he just grab Sebastian and run? Why does he bother sneaking around? Why? He clearly has no issues with murder. He made a new mom overdose on painkillers while she was breastfeeding her baby. Actually, on that subject, the new mom that had problems with latching probably would have gone in comatose much quicker. Depending on what medication she had and whether she delivered via cesarean or natural birth, it might have knocked her out, and it would do so fairly quickly. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone under before, and obviously this is not general anesthetic, but it's fairly quick to go under. And even so, she already has drugs in her system. She has been tapped into this IV, and she's sitting comfortably. She would have overdosed fairly quickly. Really, and there was also really no reason to kill the new mom. If he had just acted like a new nurse that didn't know what he was doing. If he had just acted incompetent, he wouldn't have had to kill her. Acting. That's all was needed. Was acting. It would have been his saving grace, especially because he's a psychopath. Psychopaths are good at telling other people that they're not psychopaths. That's why they get away with it. Also, I don't understand this part. I understand that 3 cameras covering Veronica go out, but are you really going to say that you didn't have a security camera that didn't catch this woman's murderer? Once her blood work comes back, they're going to find an incredible amount of drugs in her system, more than she could have administered on her own at all. There's no way that this isn't murder. Even after she went limp, he was still hitting the button to get more in her system. I don't understand this. How on earth could this have gone? I don't understand how this could have gone over the heads of the staff in charge. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, let's crack back into it. Plot. Carlos and Veronica decide to make love directly after coming home from the hospital. No. any men listening to the podcast, if there are any, I suppose they're not, maybe my brother, but any men listening to this know this. Women cannot have sex after they give birth, even if they do have a C-section. You would have to wait at least 6 weeks to have sex in case if you destroyed the incision stitches. You cannot have sex until the doctor says you are okay to do so postpartum. After they give birth, even if they do have a C-section, you would have to wait at least 6 weeks for fear of destroying the incision and the stitches. You cannot have sex until the doctor clears it at 6 weeks postpartum. I don't understand why they made this choice. Clearly, women did not have anything to do with the script because they would have immediately told you, no, this is wrong. It's wrong. And it's wrong to give any man the appearance that you can have sex this soon after birth, even if there was a C-section. You can't. And you shouldn't. You will hurt yourself. Women, if your husband or your significant other, after you give birth to your baby, if they want sex immediately, throw them out of the house. Because you will hurt yourself. And it is better for you to stay healthy for your baby than it is to give in to your husband wanting sex immediately after you give birth. Okay? Okay. Alright. The demon baby begins chewing or orally pleasuring his mother. It's either that or he's trying to crawl back inside of her or eat her. I'm not sure which is the least fucked up option. If it's the first option, it's in there 100% just for shock value and it's incredibly gross. If they really made this infant eat out his mother, because she's moaning in pleasure, that's what I got out of it, it's gross. Disgusting. Why would you put that in there? It doesn't make the story any better, except to exploit Sarah Lane's sexuality. Again. I just don't understand why they would do that. I don't understand why it was necessary. Detective Barnes is a caricature of a police officer, with his frankly inconsiderate snark and lollipops. You can't take someone seriously when they're constantly trying to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, you know? He's just too much of a cartoonish asshole to get away with any of what he does, even if he thinks that the couple are murderers. Plus, there was another murder in the hospital that night. Why isn't he looking into that too? That's 3 murders in one hospital in one day. You don't think those are connected somehow? He's an asshole to everyone involved. And I frankly hated his character up until his death scene. Just saying. Okay, Carlos probably would not have died from drinking boiling water. I know this is actually... I looked this up, and it seems like the consensus generally is that he would have definitely been scalded internally and would have definitely had to do hospital time, but it probably wouldn't have been enough to kill him. He would have spent some time in the burn unit, but he wouldn't have died from it. Okay, and then after his death, the CPS lady that the police send in is creepy. Seriously, she looks at Sebastian with like a religious reverence. I really thought that she might be a member of the cult and might be taking the kid to them, but no, she's just a really creepy CPS worker. Her death is hilarious, though, one of my favorites, honestly. But on that note, would they have enough cause to take the child without CPS doing an investigation? I'm not sure about that one, so if you know any better than I do, let you know. I actually really don't know a ton about how CPS takes away children. Also, why would they bring Sebastian back when they know his mother is living with his aunt after Carlos's death? That seems kind of counterintuitive if you're trying to keep the child away from her. If you're taking the child away, don't send the child back to a household where the mother is actively living. Here's a big one. When Veronica begins to dream or hallucinate or whatever, she dreams about her husband who loved her very much. You could tell that. Like, in his terrible, terrible way because he was a really bad actor. He loved her. and yet they depict him brutally sexually assaulting her. This adds nothing to her character, nothing to her storyline, nothing to her development, nothing. This is just an excuse for the filmmakers to have some more violent sexual imagery in the film without consequences or having to make her character go through anything to get over this kind of trauma. She doesn't have any trauma after this. It's a gross, perverted way to shock people. And actually, I'm going to jump ahead here chronologically because there are so many times that they use perverted imagery just to shock. In the final scene, for example, the cult tears open Veronica's shirt for no reason, which spills out her breasts to the audience. That is an absolutely derogatory, sexist, and misogynistic, shameful way of portraying a woman's body. It's gross and it's disgusting. Every single incidence of the sexual imagery could have been omitted and it wouldn't have taken away from the film. I don't understand why they needed to be so filthy about it. They show nipples at every possible turn. The only thing that probably had to do with it was that the story was so abysmally poor that they decided that the only way they were going to get attention with this movie was by showing women's body parts in the grossest way possible. This is unforgivable. Okay, let's calm down a minute. Let's find the center. Zen. Veronica's sister, who you never learn the name of, is a total raging bitch. She is most likely an alcoholic and is absolutely hot and cold with her sister, sometimes insulting her baby and sometimes loving her nephew. Her final argument with Veronica is absolutely ridiculous. The baby is staring at me, so that makes the baby a pervert, is a terrible fucking argument to make. Babies stare at things, they're curious about the world, they love boobies because boobies mean food. That doesn't make them creepy. I mean, don't get me wrong, the baby is 100% creeping on the aunt in the movie, but still, accusing the baby of being a creep is a really stupid argument to make. Also, blaming your sister for some dude trying to kidnap her baby is not any kind of karma. If you think something like that is karma, then you're just flat evil. I get that that the sister is hurt by Veronica's lack of support while Gabriella's daughter was being taken away by CPS. I get that. But it's not karma for this dude trying to take her baby from her when she knows she will have no chance of getting him back if she took him. Because he's a stranger. He's not the law. There's a difference between kidnapping someone's child and losing them to Child Protective Services. There is always a reason that you lose your child. Sometimes that reason is bullshit. I'm not saying that. But a lot of the time, it's better for the kid to be out of that household. And for how many drinks that we see Gabriella pouring, I absolutely understand why they would have taken her daughter. You would think that Gabriella would have had a slight amount of empathy considering that she had also had her daughter taken away. And because of that kind of hypocrisy, I cheered when she died. And then after that, half of the stuff that happens to Veronica when she's out looking for Sebastian after he's been kidnapped by Mahari is pointless. Okay, at first, how did Sebastian go missing in the first place? She was watching as he killed her sister, and then he just goes AWOL. How did he get out of the house? Anyway, the guy shooting his friends and Veronica accidentally killing a homeless person, which was cheap and definitely wouldn't have killed him. She only gave him a gentle shove away from her so that he would get out of her face, is completely meaningless. It doesn't serve any purpose except to introduce the priest, but the priest doesn't come into play at all either. He's just randomly there, and then he's gone, and then he gets killed by Sebastian while his prayers are ineffective over Veronica. There's no meaning to any of it. I suppose the violence was there for just the sake of violence, and when violence is there for the sake of violence, it's a hallmark of a movie that is not only bad, but awful. Awful. And not in the good way. Okay, let's calm down again. I'm getting my blood pressure's rising again. How did Detective Barnes know what the cult was up to? Did they find the body of the sacrificed woman? Did they go through scores of lore? I don't know. I don't think that the instructions for birthing the Antichrist are something that you can just find with a Google search. And he seems to believe that the cult thinks that Sebastian is the devil's vessel. Yes, I'm going to use a supernatural term because that's the one that makes the most sense. But he doesn't believe that he is. If they truly had no idea what they were getting into with the cult and Sebastian, that would be an excellent way to humanize these people. At least they believe it's happening. They're just misinformed. At least they would try more. The ending. Okay, the ending. Again, they just stuck some horns on the demon baby and made him do the same shit over and over and over. Honestly, half the movie is people spinning around in circles, holding a paper-mache baby to their throats. Most of these kills last far too long. One of them goes for at least 30 to 40 seconds. A kill that lasts that long is ridiculous. It's absolute garbage, and I think it's actually Veronica's death that takes that long. Everything in this film feels like they just threw up their hands and said, fuck it! Too hard. Sorry. Fuck it. Bye. The acting isn't any better. None of them are good in these roles. None of them. Veronica is the worst. She has two emotions. Ridiculous amounts of screaming, or loving mommy eyes. Look at my pretty baby. Oh, I missed you so much, my love. Nothing else. Carlos is weak at best. It feels like they just slapped some tattoos on Mahari and told him to be a meaty head like he's fucking 5 or something. The hiker is so bad that you can't even take it. It's enough to drive someone crazy. Listen to this.
What are you doing here? What the fuck happened to you? Oh my god, you smell.
Speaking of, there's something that we talk about a lot in writing called show, not tell. If the baby smells, don't say that he smells. If he's filthy, don't say that he's filthy. Show us. Have the hiker pinch her nostrils shut. Have her try to wipe the dirt from the baby's face. Stop telling us. When you do that, your audience loses faith in what you're trying to tell them. They will resent the fact that you don't think they'll get it. You are absolutely underestimating the power of your audience if you don't know that they don't get, that smells awful, by somebody pinching their nose shut like a 5-year-old. They get it. We get it. We're not stupid. Stop treating us like we are. Okay, quick. This is more funny. Sebastian's ego is hilarious. Someone calls him ugly and they immediately die. Every person who calls him ugly or stinky or anything like that dies a horrific death, either from him ripping out their throats or compelling themselves to drown themselves in a sink, or cut their throats with the box cutter, or stick a fork in a microwave with the gas on. Lol. The baby can't handle being told that he's ugly. He can't handle it. Along these lines, why have him be ugly at all? This is something I kind of didn't understand from the get-go. Much of the literature involving Lucifer or Satan talks about him being the most beautiful of all angels. And then he fell from grace. Why not allow his spawn to be beautiful and angelic so that he can lure people in with his charm? You can make people damn themselves very easily if you have the right charisma. It's just a thought. Okay. The sequel bait ending was ridiculous. Why would, out of all the characters, Veronica wake up? Sebastian killed her and was looking like he was about to kill her before, so why on earth did she come back? Did he regret her death? We don't know. None of the others have ever come back. It's only meant to set up a modicum of interest in a potential sequel. Also, what was with that montage? We just watched the entirety of this shitty film. We know of everyone who died. Granted, some of them might have been forgotten, like the maintenance worker that Mahari strangled to death. But still, many more people will die because of this child. These are just the first 20 to 25 people. Why did we need a montage? Okay, the summary attached to this movie is incredibly misleading. Normally, I wouldn't comment on this, but it's so bad. The Wikipedia article for the movie lists it with this caption. The film begins with a baby, Sebastian, being born. After Sebastian viciously murders the doctors who delivered him, his mother realizes that there is something wrong with the child. Over the course of the movie, many people die and tragedy strikes many others. Mahari attempts to steal the baby from Sebastian's birth parents many times and eventually does. He steals Sebastian in order to embrace his evil calling. Police officers attempt to kill Mahari, but Mahari and his companions use Sebastian to murder them. The movie ends with all the main characters dead, and their deaths were associated with some way with Sebastian. 12, 12, 12. Okay, first, no. Veronica never seems to realize that there is something wrong with her child, with the exception of a blink and you'll miss it throwaway line where she agrees with Carlos to take Sebastian to a doctor. Otherwise, the entire movie is spent cooing over him and loving him and holding him and chasing him and wanting him back with her. In fact, that she does this so much that she actively avoids so many of the red flags. She never acknowledges his parentage, which is implied by the paragraph above, to be the devil himself. She never thinks that he is the son of hell, or that he has an evil calling despite him killing her own sister. Also, why do you have to include the phrase 12, 12, 12 at the end of the paragraph? We know that it's the name of the movie. We just watched the movie. We just looked up the movie. You don't need to add 12, 12, 12 to the end. Along those lines, why are there two titles? It's so overdramatic and stupid to have both. Out of the two, I think that Evil Born would have been much more appropriate for the title. But the director wanted to cash in on the phenomenon where people wanted their children to be born on 10-10-10 or 11-11-11. That's the only reason that it's in the movie. That and it's a good excuse to make a racist caricature out of Latin people, because of course it's going to be Latino people who are the ones going to end the world because of the Mayan calendar. Every time you watch this garbage, you find a new layer of awfulness. I'm skipping over the rampant sexism, but after my rant on the rape scene, I think you should know just how angry I got about that. To quote Crimson Rogue on YouTube, if you can use anything other than rape to further along the plot, don't use rape. Or stabbing a naked woman covered in fake blood. Or tearing open a woman's shirt to expose her when her son is about to kill her. Or show fake representations of Veronica's cervix when she's in labor. Or how her breast has a sexual light when she's in the middle of breastfeeding. Or watching a nipple bleed after her son bites down onto the flesh. I'm honestly skipping over so much misogyny, it's kind of amazing. It's insulting, guys. I'm sorry for getting so angry about this, but it's actually really insulting. I've been watching movies for a long time. And I love watching movies, especially the terrible ones, which is why I created this podcast, but this is almost not even fun anymore. The dialogue is garbage. Every single thing that anyone says is not something a normal person might say. Case in point, the hiker scene.
You want to listen to me before, right? I told you he was banging that slut. Right. Seriously? I mean...
No one would ever say that. There's also a lot of casual profanity thrown in. I will say that although I don't particularly like swearing, as you've probably heard in this podcast, you do need to be tactful about it. You don't have to say fuck just because you want to be naughty like Carlos.
Watch this.
Fuck.
Stop it. It's not funny.
It's unnecessary and redundant. Also, if I had a nickel for every time Veronica screams, Sebastian! I would not be recording this here in my closet. I would be recording this on a yacht in Fiji surrounded by Louis Vuitton furniture, wearing 12 pairs of Louboutin heels at once, and own more Birkins than Jeffree Star could fathom. I would be so rich that I could finally solve world hunger. In other words, the Scot is repetitive, gaudy, blatantly sexist, and xenophobic. Okay, I'm still skipping over a lot of stuff, but I'm worried about runtime here for us. At this point, I'm going to cut out a lot, so I don't know where you guys will be. I'm currently at about 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 25 seconds worth of recording. So I kind of want to wrap it soon here, but I have a couple more things to say. So this is my last point. It's a perfectly subjective one. The spawn of Satan trope is terribly overdone. Why would Satan want to inhabit the body of an infant? Surely the risks outweigh the benefits. He can't walk or talk. He can't inspire people to damn themselves. You know what I want to see? I want to see a man who finds out he's the spawn of Satan when he's 66 and his lucrative political career is the downfall of humanity. Why can't I have that kind of a cult movie? Why do I need 1,000 Rosemary's Baby clones when I can have Rosemary's Baby and the son of Rosemary? 2 words to the people who came up with this concept: you're boring. It's overdone. I get the spawn of Satan. I get that it's an interesting concept. But I think that it's much more interesting to have a spawn of Satan that's grown up and recognizes what he's doing. and thinks that it's good, because it makes for a much more compelling story than what we got here. You can't see that, but I just shrugged. Okay, let's go into the real reviews, because this is where it's gonna get fun, everybody. There were some really, really hilarious reviews of this movie. For example, IMDb reviews. Okay, IMDb gave this film a composite score of 1.8 out of 10 stars. So, Tay Hagen, 23, from IMDb says, I would rather watch an orgy of windless raccoons than watch this movie again. Let me just say that it is the most frustrating movie I have ever watched. Everything from the acting, to the audio, to the set design, it's the most garbage film I've ever seen in my life. There wasn't a single thing about the movie that I had enjoyed. It was entirely based on shock factor. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what particular scene I'm talking about. That was the utmost revolting cinematic moment I have ever seen, and I think I will ever see. Please, if you're out there and haven't seen it, don't. Just don't. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the money. You couldn't pay me to watch this movie again. Save your money. Instead, go buy yourself some ice cream or some Cheetos. I don't know. Nothing would be worse than this. I agree. This is one of the ones where I know that I said in the spoiler/trigger warning, if you would like to watch the movie, you should, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that if you would like to watch the movie, go ahead, but do so under the knowledge that it is not something you should ever enjoy. You will not enjoy it. You will hate your whole time doing it. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Classic from IMDb also calls the film an absolute masterpiece. Everything about this movie is beautifully crafted. I'll start with the editing. Top notch. Looks like it was made in Windows Movie Maker. Ooh. The cinematography? Absolutely courageous and breathtaking. They definitely took a note from Battlefield Earth and filmed almost all the scenes in Dutch angles, which is so innovative and purposeful. The actors were clearly hand-selected from such fine conservatories as AMDA and Barbizon. The best actor is definitely Sebastian, the baby. He's such a convincing ragdoll, I almost forgot he was supposed to be a real baby. And the script, the script! Filled with so many iconic lines such as, it looks like a cross between a hemorrhoid and a herpy. And why does everyone keep telling me to breathe? Because you gotta breathe. And of course, Sebastian! Definitely snubbed by the Academy in 2012 for the Best Original Screenplay nomination. I highly recommend this movie when you're blackout drunk or high as balls. Oh, I'm sorry, that was my favorite. This was my favorite one for this movie, honestly. Also, I'm gonna say now, Rotten Tomatoes did not have a critic score, but did have an audience score of 14%. Jesus. 14%. Wow. That's, I think, the lowest score I've ever seen on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb. But I will say there was one comment, and it kind of just reiterated everything that I just said, so I felt like it wasn't really good to use that here. So, no comments from Rotten Tomatoes today, but I do have some good ones from Amazon, and then a couple from Tumblr, believe it or not. I looked the film up on Tumblr, and I have a couple of good comments that I'll be sharing after I read the Amazon reviews. So here we go. An Amazon reviewer said, absolute perverted garbage. Hideously misogynistic, too. Nobody can safely have sex a week after giving birth. What the fuck? There was so much sickness in this, though, that I don't even want to mention most of it. How do hacks like whoever made this manage to get their drivel produced? They obviously have no clue about what's thrilling, sexy, suspenseful, or scary. Watch Omen or Rosemary's Baby again instead. Can't go wrong with the classics, especially when you need to be reminded what a good horror movie looks like after seeing trash like this. Another commenter said, the idea behind it was good. I kind of disagree with that, but okay. Their first mistake was the baby. We never see it unwrapped in sheets, and the very few times we did see it, it looked like about as amateurish as you could get. Granted, I'm sure they couldn't find or use a real-life baby for the close-ups, but still. I'm sure they wanted it to look ugly. Most babies are, Second, the attacks. Sigh. If this were a Chucky doll, it makes more sense. Comes alive when it chooses to and carefully kills everyone. Here, the baby kills everyone vampire style. The other deaths I never understood. Seems anyone who came near the baby is possessed into killing themselves, except the sister and the detective. Why? The acting from the entire cast isn't bad. Some didn't do as well as others, but I think the script could take the blame on that. I actually do agree with that. I think that some of this was absolutely the script. Some questionable moments like the deaths in the hospital. Why wasn't the mother arrested? In reality, she would have been. Second, why did the mother keep the baby knowing that it kills? Third, how was her sister and the detective and the creepy guy the only ones to live after coming in contact with the baby? I watched the film mainly and only to see some of my favorite actresses. The film overall is not terrible. Hey, I have Amazon Prime. Trust me, there's a lot of worse movies out there that'll make this one look like a box office hit. Sir, if that is true, where are you finding them? Where are they? You need to show them to me. Because I have never seen, in all of my time watching terrible, terrible creature features, I have never seen something this bad. So now I'm going to get into the Tumblr reviews. Excuse me while I scroll through my phone, which I've been reading my script off of, so I'm sorry if you have heard some of the zzz when I get a text. I can't help it. My tablet is dead at the moment, and I didn't want to wait to record this any further. So, here we go. A commentator on Tumblr said, "As soon as the baby started eating out the mother, I was done. I can handle a lot of shit from a movie, but that's too much. Not to mention the ridiculously bad graphics, acting, and the baby choking doctors with its umbilical cord. The graphics were so terrible, I couldn't even tell how it managed such a feat. The movie was awful. Thank you." Alright, and the next one says, "So, my dad's going through Netflix and he stops at a movie, 12-12-12, and I read the description and I said, the child is the spawn of hell, and I have tears rolling down my face. I am laughing so hard. Holy hell, I just thought it was hilarious and I don't even why it just killed me. Oh my god, I need a life. I am definitely cracked." I don't think you're cracked. I think it was ridiculously hilarious. I just don't think it's hilarious for that particular reason. Here's my review. Obviously, you guys know that I have some very strong feelings about this film now that you have gone through probably an hour and 15 minutes worth of me talking about it. But here's where I stand. And it should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. This movie is as bad as it can get, and in addition is a film that was somehow allowed into cinemas. People saw this trash in theaters, and that is unforgivable. I think that the 14% audience score is too high. I think that the 1.8 out of 10 IMDb score is too high. This is a film that should be watched by no one except the morbidly curious, and even then it should be ripped straight from the internet instead of paid for. This movie is absolutely shameful and hilarious, shot at awkward angles and filled with terrible messages. If this movie doesn't kickstart my seasonal depression into high gear, it will be a fucking miracle. This movie deserves no more than a 0.5 out of 10, but I'll adjust my score up just because of the insane laughter that I couldn't help but let out from time to time. And the reactions from my family and friends when I showed them the still shot of Sebastian that I took on the computer. My final score for this movie is a Dutch tilt out of 10. We're really kicking this show up in the high gear now, guys. That was horrific. That was horrendous. Why did you make me do that? I know you guys didn't make me do that. I made me do that, but why did we do that? I have another rant review coming at you very soon. Next episode, actually. And I'm excited for it because I have almost as much to say as I did about this one. Hopefully the show will be a little shorter after that one. And then after that one, we're going back into our beloved creature features. I know that this isn't technically a creature feature. Okay, I'm going to take it back. This is a creature feature because the demon baby does not look anything like a human baby. So, it's a creature feature. Sue me. Alright, everybody. I think that this is my cue to sign off for the day. This has been the So Below Average podcast. Please join us again on February 19th for our first book review on the show, and I think this one is so bad that my brain is physically shutting down every time I pick up the damned thing. Tune in if you like my commentary, or if you hate it and you want to hear my soul screaming for me to finally cast it out into the void. If you feel so inclined, please follow my Twitter page at SoBelowAverage1, that's SOBELOWAVERAGE1 on Twitter. If you're listening on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, like, and share these videos so that I can reach more people who enjoy suffering. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you'll be informed of exactly when I add a new episode. If you'd like to, please follow our Instagram page at SoBelowAveragePodcast for fun reference images from the film. Or for fun, whichever. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please reach out to me at belowaverage19@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember not to go anywhere near this movie. It's so below average. Thanks, guys. Bye.